So why is it a good idea to overdrink, and why is it a good idea for us to become workaholics and possibly do drugs? Well, let's talk about that today. Well, let me tell you, it's because life is hard, because feelings is difficult, because healing from trauma can be challenging, and being honest with ourselves can suck. But the cost of that is so dramatic. If we continue to overdrink, become workaholics, do drug or overeat, or do all of those things to avoid our feelings and traumas, it costs us our spirit. Our spirit within us will shrivel and die, and we land in a place we don't want to be, where we're just going through the motions, numb, have addictions that end up hurting ourselves and others, and we'll likely have health issues that can destroy us. But we are too valuable for that. You're valuable, and the universe treasures you. So let's talk about alternatives. So let's just first talk about how drinking, overworking, all of these different options can actually help us avoid feeling our feelings or dealing with our traumas. Drinking, for example, and I have nothing against drinking at all, just so you know. But drinking regularly can help us ignore things like, oh, I don't really like my job. I find it soul-sucking without purpose. Or drinking can help us avoid things that are true for us. For example, I don't really like this relationship. It's destroying me. Drinking can help us ignore the constant criticism and yelling we experience at home. Or it can help us soften the anger that we're feeling regularly, and the anger is trying to tell us something. It can suppress the rape maybe that we had it when we were 17. It can distract us from believing that we're lovable. I really like the example from Brooke Castillo. She is life coach, did the life coach school, talks a lot about wealth building, but she's one of the certifications I have in life coaching. And I like her story because first she stopped overeating and became very successful at that. And then she stopped over drinking and applied the same rules to that. But what she really learned through that is she was doing both of them to buffer herself from her feelings, because she didn't want to acknowledge realities in her life. She didn't want to be honest with herself. And I feel like we can all do that. So I really like her example. Overworking isn't a workaholism is actually kind of a really interesting one, because it gives you validation in society because it looks like you're hardworking, you're achieving, but overworking can actually be toxic and buffering and all of that as well. For example, maybe we're working because we don't want to go home because we don't feel validated there or appreciated, or maybe because it's just not a positive environment. So, gosh, we can work, get money, get validation from others. I mean, win-win. Or maybe it helps us validate us because we grew up in an environment that caused us to believe that in order to be viewed as important, we had to work hard and be successful and stand out in order to be worthy. So we are workaholics in order to accomplish that and buffer from our real feelings of maybe unworthiness. And we all have our struggles. For example, this is when, and I'll talk about mine too, but this is when my husband can relate to Mike, because he used to overwork and was more of a workaholic because he really didn't like his dynamic of his relationship and his marriage at the time. But that didn't solve anything. It just kind of buffered and allowed him to go through the motions. So for my choice poison, which I just think is interesting, I would distract myself from my feelings and for dealing with my traumas by serving others. But it wasn't serving others is fabulous, but I was cooking for the homeless and mentally ill. I was visiting nursing home with my kids, and those are all fabulous, but I was doing it in such a way to be so busy that I didn't spend time to allow what my true thoughts and feelings that were lurking hidden in my basement. And so my choice poison was busyness. Because with all of these, I would say the one rule is don't be still, don't think, don't go deeper, because all of them are trying to push down the real thoughts and feelings and things that are really going on. So if you can like eliminate the stillness or eliminate that by drinking, overworking, or whatever we want to do, then we don't have to feel our feelings. We don't have to hear what it's telling us. The challenge with that is, it allowed me to be in a destructive relationship for a very long time. So even though I was like cutting off the pain of, distracting myself from serving others, it also, what it did is it chopped off the joy in my life as well. So I started getting very limited emotions and like couldn't even cry anymore. And basically I was just kind of going through the motions, but I wasn't living. And also it caused anxiety, which I stopped like sleeping, and that caused mental health challenges. So my choice poison works like all of them, not helpful in the end. So another thing that I think is interesting is medication for like anxiety, depression, or like what I was diagnosed with, bipolar. It can be super helpful at a time, but it can also numb what's really going on because our feelings are trying to tell us something. And so first of all, I always have to say this. I'm definitely not against taking medication. I definitely think you shouldn't stop. If you do decide that that's something you want to pursue, do it with a doctor and do it over a long time. Because a lot of people, they'll try to even do it within 6 months and then they have withdrawals, from the medication or what it's doing. So it has to be a very long process. So get that out of your brain that I'm trying to say don't be on medication. And what can happen though is it again subdues information our bodies are trying to give us. Like our bodies are trying to tell us we're anxious because it's not okay with this or that, there's things it's trying to tell us, or it's telling us like we're depressed because of, I can relate with all of them. Like I was depressed because got to the point where I was so exhausted and also was having Hashimoto's that was undiagnosed. That didn't help. So, emotions are meant to tell us information. And basically, like when I got on medication, it was so helpful at the time. It was great. And it also allowed me to stay in my domestically abusive relationship for 10 plus more years because it numbed my emotions. I didn't really know how bad it was hurting me because of the medication. So it had kind of two sides to it. So it's just always good to be curious about like, why am I feeling anxious? Why am I feeling sad all the time? And, look into it. And again, not against medication. I'm like, if something is going to improve our well-being in life, absolutely go for it. For me, my life was the kind girl, doing the right things, being a Christian, marrying a Christian guy. And really, the relationship was very destructive to me. And I ended up in the psych ward twice and got labeled bipolar at the time. And it was just a very challenging, awful situation. And so there wasn't mutuality in working things out. And so I chose a divorce. And then I just questioned myself. I questioned all the whys and questioned my beliefs that got me there and all of my people pleasing and my serving, and really had to rediscover myself and healthy relationship with God and myself and others. And it was a process. So I created the Unravel notebook, and that was the process that helped me go from that situation to living a life abundantly as a realtor and a life coach and really thriving in a beautiful marriage. And that's what I want to help others do as well and create their life by intention to live brighter one day at a time. But there's so many things that can keep buffering us or keep us from feeling our feelings or dealing with our traumas. It could be, like I said, drugs. It could be not just prescription drugs, but it could be, cocaine, meth, any of those things. It could be anorexia. It could be affairs. It could be overeating. We could be using whatever we want. It could be exercise. It could be supposedly good things like I was doing, like serving. But all of those, if it's keeping us from feeling our feelings and dealing with our injuries to our soul and spirit that we had when we were younger and haven't healed, it's not helping us. It's not helping us in the long run, and it'll have a cost. So be brave. Choose you. Don't let the support that we are using become our chains. So the one thing that I think all buffering is doing is basically soothing us and distracting us from hearing what our spirit, what our soul, what is going deeper. And the biggest thing we'll know is, can we be still? A big good test is like, can we be still? And when we're still, what comes up for us? Is it like super uncomfortable, the emotions, the feelings? Are we able to sit in with ourselves, to press into that stillness, to listen? And this was something I did not do at all and had to train myself to do because, again, I was avoiding what I probably at the time didn't want to hear. But even I do it still. So, for example, I'll give you an example. So, I love popcorn. Popcorn, I would say, is like my weakness. The challenge is I kind of learned recently that popcorn doesn't love me. It doesn't make me feel good. And so I'm like, crap, I love popcorn. It's just like that crunchy, salty. It's just so wonderful. So I switched to puffed rice, which, I mean, I don't know, gives you the crunchy, gives you something. Well, last night I ate 3 bowls of puffed rice, like dry. I have it dry. 3 bowls. And I asked myself, I'm like, ooh, this is unusual. What am I avoiding? Am I willing to be still? And so I had to put myself kind of in a timeout and be still. And in that case, what was happening is I was really missing my husband. So we've been apart for over about 3.5 weeks now, as he's working in Florida with the hurricane stuff. And I was really missing him. And so what I did is, once I'm like, oh, I am super missing him. I'm, just lonely for him. And I just gave it voice and I felt my feelings, and then that really helped soothe it. And that's the cool thing, is a lot of us aren't taught how to process and feel feelings and deal with traumas and stuff like that. So there's 4 steps to this. Step 1 is watch for avoidant patterns. Like drink now and then, overwork now and then, eat my puffed rice now and then. But if it becomes a pattern, the question is like, what am I avoiding? So step 2 is be still and ask ourselves, what am I avoiding? Step 3 is feel the feelings. Like at that point, I was feeling lonely and missing him. And so I just sat with myself and just asked myself in my body, like, where are you feeling this? And it was around my heart, and like just looking at the color and looking at how it felt in my body. And the cool thing is when we do that, feelings actually dissipate. So if we don't resist them and we don't like lash out, if we feel them, they process. And it was dissipating in 60 to 90 seconds. And then we can be curious. It's like, what was that feeling? Like sometimes I can't, don't have a word for the feeling. And so learning the language of like, what was that feeling? Was that loneliness? Was that like, what does shame feel like? What does sadness feel like? What does disappointment feel like? All of those, because none of those are bad emotions. Those are helpful information. And learning to feel and be curious about them helps us understand ourselves and the information that our bodies and are giving us, so we can work together with our bodies and minds. And number 4, I always talk about the barf plan. And that's basically you barf out your thoughts, like write all your thoughts down, sort them out. And there's a series of questions like, is it true? What are the facts? What about this really bothers us? And then plan out the next steps. And that's key, because rather than just being up here, then we can actually process, plan. And sometimes the plan involves just not doing anything. But it really helps us to be conscious. So you can go to my website at livebrighter.info and look for the free barf plan. And it'll have like, okay, this is what we do. Barf out your thoughts. This is how we sort them. This is how you plan them. And using that tool daily, 10 minutes a day, can really change your life. It's changed my life, and it can change yours. So the big thing to know is we are not alone. We've all gone through things, and we can get help. We can sort through this. We can have counselors. If you do choose a counselor, make sure they're trauma informed and EMDR if it's something about a trauma. And you can do a lot of processing on your own, which is fabulous. And if you feel like, oh, what I'm feeling isn't a big deal, but you find that you're feeling it regularly, it's a big deal. So don't tell yourself that. You are valuable. We're supposed to love God with our heart, soul, mind, and strength. And I say love universe or God, however you want to say it, source. And then we're supposed to love others as we love ourselves. And that starts by loving ourselves. And to love ourselves, we have to prioritize what's really going on beneath the surface. So if you are interested in counseling, if you listen to episode with me, Live Brighter with Tara, episode 60 and 61, that's with Dawn Dominguez, Windows of Hope, and she has counseling on a sliding scale. I always tell my kids, like, counseling is so valuable. I have a counselor, huge, and I always tell my kids, first 5 counseling sessions on me. It's just so, so important. Also, if you look at episodes 56 and 57 with Susan Williams with Finding Freedom, she has free mental health support, and that's in the community environment, and she can do that via Zoom. It's fabulous. I've been part of their organization. I think it's helpful. BetterHelp.com is online counseling. Also, the whole reason why I wrote the Unravel Notebook, available on Amazon, is to unravel our thoughts so we can just live healthier and brighter. And so that is an option too. So lots of options. But the biggest thing is just to be brave and choose you. I believe in you. Make it a great day.